Welcome to Rings of Power, where we uncover the hidden roads of Middle-earth and tell the tales that Tolkien never wrote. Before we begin, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time of day or night this narration has reached you. Tonight, we follow one such path, where the Harfoots wander through shadow and starlight, and an ancient darkness walks beside them. In the deepest forests of Middle-earth, where ancient roots drink from streams older than memory, something stirs in the undergrowth. Not the heavy tread of orcs, nor the measured steps of elves, but the gentle patter of bare feet upon moss-covered stone. These are the paths of the Harfoots, the forgotten wanderers, the lost children of Arda's dawn. Their songs drift through the twilight like half-remembered dreams, melodies that speak of stars no longer burning and roads that lead to nowhere. To the casual observer, these small folk appear innocent, harmless creatures living in harmony with leaf and stream. Yet beneath their humble exterior lies a mystery that may reshape our understanding of the Second Age itself. The trees whisper their names in languages lost to time. The stones remember their footfalls from ages past. But what secrets do the Harfoots carry in their wandering hearts? What darkness walks alongside their light? For in the great tapestry of Middle-earth's history, even the smallest threads may weave the mightiest destinies. Listen carefully to the wind through the branches. Can you hear it? That distant melody, older than the rings of power themselves, carries within it the echo of a truth so profound that even the Valar fear to speak it aloud. The Harfoots sing of fire that walks, and stars that fall, of dragons sleeping beneath green hills, and of a shadow that wears the face of light. But who taught them these songs? And why do their voices carry the weight of prophecy? As darkness gathers once more in the lands of Middle-earth, as Galadriel's hunt for Sauron reaches its fevered pitch, and as the very foundations of Nent Menor begin to tremble, the wandering paths of the Harfoots may hold the key to understanding not just where evil has been, but where it is destined to go. For the smallest folk often carry the greatest burdens, and in their seemingly innocent migrations lies a mystery that predates the forging of the One Ring itself. A secret so dangerous that its revelation might change the fate of all Middle-earth. The mist rises from the forest floor, and with it comes a voice that should not exist in this age of the world. Long before the Shire knew the comfort of Hobbit holes, before the Green Dragon served its first pint of ale, there walked upon Middle-earth a people whose very existence has become the stuff of whispered legend. The Harfoots, wanderers without kingdom, migrants without destination, singers of songs whose meanings have been lost to the turning of the years. In the vast chronicles of Tolkien's legendarium, we glimpse them only in fragments, shadows cast by a flame that burned bright in the world's youth. Yet what fragments they are! For in these glimpses lies a story that may predate even the awakening of the elves, a tale that reaches back to the music of the Ainur itself. They came from the east, these small folk, following paths traced by starlight and dreams. Some say they were among the first children to wake beneath Varda's newly kindled stars, blessed with an innocence that even the corruption of Morgoth could not fully touch. Others whisper darker truths, that their wandering was not chosen but enforced, that they fled from something so terrible that even the memory of it was buried beneath centuries of song and story. Picture them in those distant days, families no larger than your hand, carrying all their worldly possessions in woven baskets and leather satchels. Their children walking barefoot through dew-laden grass, while their elders, navigated by constellations that no longer shine in our sky. They left no cities, built no monuments, claimed no crowns. Their legacy was written in footprints upon forest paths, and in melodies that passed from mother to daughter, like sacred flame. But what guided their endless migration? Ancient texts speak of the Harfoots following, the call of the wild wind, seeking always the places where the world was young and the shadow had not yet fallen. They were drawn to hidden valleys, where malorn trees still grew, to streams that sang with the voices of the Aina, to clearings where the light of the two trees still lingered in the flowers that bloomed there. Yet there was more to their wandering than mere love of nature's beauty. The Harfoots possessed what the elves called the deep sight, an ability to perceive the bones of the world beneath its skin, to feel the pulse of Arda's heart through the soles of their feet. They could sense where the music of creation still played purely and where discordant notes had crept in. This gift made them natural healers, but it also made them living barometers of the world's spiritual health. As the First Age drew to its cataclysmic close, as Morgoth's reign of terror reached its crescendo and the War of Wrath shook the very foundations of Middle-earth, the Harfoot songs began to change. New verses appeared, dark prophecies wrapped in childish rhymes, warnings disguised as lullabies. Their migrations became more urgent, as if they were fleeing not just physical danger, but some metaphysical threat that pressed upon their collective soul. The few elvish records that survive from this period speak of Harfoot settlements appearing and disappearing like morning mist, their inhabitants moving always westward, always toward the sea. But they never reached the grey havens. They never sought passage to the undying lands. Instead, they turned inland at the last moment, following river valleys and mountain passes into the wild heart of Middle-earth. What were they seeking? Or perhaps more pertinently, what were they avoiding? In the great libraries of Rivendell, scholars have noted curious gaps in the historical record. Entire Harfoot lineages simply vanish from the annals, as if erased by some deliberate hand. Their songs, once recorded by elvish loremasters, show signs of tampering, verses excised, melodies altered, meanings obscured. Someone, or something, did not want their full story to survive, but songs have a way of remembering what books forget. In the deepest woods where no scribe's pen has ever ventured, where only the trees and stones serve as witnesses, fragments of the original Harfoot melodies still echo. And these fragments speak of a truth so profound, so dangerous, that its revelation might shake the very pillars of heaven. They sing of a fair stranger who walked among them in the world's youth, offering gifts of fire and wisdom. They sing of a voice like honey and gold that taught them new songs, songs that made the crops grow taller and the waters run cleaner, but that also changed something fundamental in their nature. They sing of promises made and prices paid, of bargains struck in starlight and sealed with ancient words. And they sing, in whispers so soft that only the wind can hear them, of a name that should not be spoken aloud, Meren the Admirable, The form that Sauron wore, when the world was young and his corruption had not yet revealed itself. From the depths of the cosmic void it fell, trailing fire and mystery in equal measure. A comet blazing across the star, scattered dome of night, its light visible from Lindon to Rovanion, from the grey havens to the sea of Rhan. Astronomers in the towers of Nen Menna marked its passage with wonder and unease, while elvish seers felt something stir in the deep places of their prescient hearts. But it was the Harfoots who found him. In a crater still smoking with celestial fire, they discovered the stranger. Naked as the day of his making, his flesh unmarked by flame, though the very stones around him had melted to glass. He was tall for their standards, though by the measure of men he would seem but a youth. His hair was wild and dark. His eyes held depths that spoke of vast distances traveled and sorrows witnessed. Yet there was something else in those eyes, a flicker of recognition, as if he had been searching for precisely these small folk in their hidden vale. The Harfoots approached with the cautious kindness that was their nature. They clothed him in rough, woven cloth, fed him berries and stream, water, spoke to him in the old tongue that their grandmothers had taught them. And though he could not answer in their language, his eyes seemed to understand every word they spoke. More than understand, they seemed to remember. Poppy Proudfellow was the first to notice the strangeness. As she tended the stranger's scraped hands, she observed that the fire they had built to warm him held no power over his flesh. Where orange flames licked at his fingers, his skin remained unburned. Where red coals pressed against his palm, he felt no pain. It was as if the fire recognized him as its master, even though he seemed to possess no conscious knowledge of this dominion. But fire was not the only element that bent to his unconscious will. When he slept, the grass beneath him grew greener and more lush. When he woke, the morning dew formed patterns around him, spirals and circles that reminded the eldest Harfoots of symbols they had seen in their most ancient song, scrolls. Plants bloomed in his footsteps. Birds fell silent when he passed, not from fear but from reverence, as if they recognized in him some echo of the great song that gave them voice. Nori Brandyfoot, ever the skeptic, watched the stranger with calculating eyes. She had heard the old stories, the warnings passed down through generations of Harfoot wanderers. When a star falls, her grandmother had told her, it carries within it either the greatest blessing or the darkest curse. The two are often indistinguishable until it is too late to choose which you have received. The stranger's presence among them was both gift and burden. His power, for power he clearly possessed, even if he could not yet control it, protected them from the wolves and wargs that had begun prowling the borders of their camp. Strange lights danced around their settlement at night, keeping the darkness at bay. Their crops, meager though they were, flourished beyond all reasonable expectation, yet there were disturbing signs as well. The stranger spoke in his sleep, and the words he uttered were in no language the Harfoots recognized. They were old words, words that seemed to carry the weight of starlight and the heat of forge, fire. Some among the small folk claimed they could feel those words in their bones, resonating with something deep and primal that they had thought long buried. Marigold Brandyfoot, whose gift for prophecy was acknowledged even among her skeptical kin, began to have dreams. In these visions, she saw the stranger as he truly was, not the confused and gentle being they had taken in, but a figure of terrible majesty, wreathed in flame and shadow. She saw him standing atop mountains that had not yet been raised, speaking words that commanded dragons, holding in his hands powers that could reshape the very foundations of the world. But were these visions of who he had been, or warnings of who he might become? The question haunted the Harfoot settlement like a fever. Some argued that the stranger was one of the Istari, the wise ones sent by the Valar to guide and protect the peoples of Middle-earth. His gentleness with their children, his evident distress at any creature's suffering, his instinctive desire to heal rather than harm, all spoke to a nature fundamentally aligned with the light. Others whispered darker possibilities. They noted how the fire obeyed him without conscious command, how the very earth seemed to reshape itself according to his unconscious desires. Such power was the province of the Aina, but not all Aina had remained true to their original purpose. Some had fallen, seduced by the promise of dominion over the music of creation itself. As the days passed, and the stranger slowly recovered his strength, these debates took on an increasingly urgent tone. For the Harfoots had begun to notice that their wandering had changed since his arrival, where, once they had moved according to the ancient patterns, following game trails and seasonal migrations, seeking always the hidden places where the world's heart beat strongest. Now their path seemed dictated by the stranger's unconscious pull toward some distant destination. He would stand at the edge of their camp in the pre-dawn hours, facing always east, his body tense with longing for something he could not name. When the time came to break camp and continue their migration, it was invariably in the direction he had been gazing. The Harfoots found themselves following roads they had never walked, approaching valleys they had specifically avoided in generations past. And in the deepest hours of the night, when even the bravest among them lay sleeping, some claimed to hear the stranger whisper a single word, a word that made the flames dance higher and the shadows grow longer, a word that seemed to carry within it the promise of power beyond imagining and the threat of corruption beyond redemption. The word he whispered was ancient, older than the kingdoms of men, older than the first rising of the sun. It was a word in the black speech, the tongue of Mordor, though none among the Harfoots possessed the knowledge to recognize it as such. But the darkness recognized it. And slowly, inevitably, the darkness began to listen. In the deepest archives of memory, where the Harfoots keep their most sacred treasures, there exists a song that is never sung in full. Its verses are scattered among the generations, like seeds upon the wind. A line remembered here, a melody hummed there. Fragments of a greater whole that none dare reconstruct in its entirety. The Song of the Walking Fire, they call it, though even this name is spoken only in whispers, and only when the moon is dark. It tells of flames that took the shape of men, of stars that fell not from heaven, but from grace, of promises made in the world's youth, that echo still in the turning of the years. The eldest among the Harfoots claim it was old when their grandmothers were young, passed down through countless generations of wanderers who dared not forget but feared to remember. Sadok Burrows, the keeper of songs and the guardian of the Harfoots' deepest lore, knows more verses than any living soul. Yet even he has never sung them all together. For the old women who taught him warned that such a performance might wake things better left sleeping. Songs have power, his grandmother told him, her eyes reflecting the firelight like ancient amber. Some songs are keys, and some doors should never be opened. But what door does this song unlock? What truth lies hidden in its fragmentary verses? The melody itself is deceptively simple. A child's lullaby, really, with the gentle rise and fall of a mother's voice soothing her young to sleep. Yet within that innocent tune lurk harmonies that seem to resonate with something far older than childhood comfort. When the Harfoots sing it around their campfires, even in its incomplete form, the flames burn brighter and the shadows dance in patterns that recall ancient symbols of power. The first verses speak of the early days, when the world was young and the music of creation still echoed clearly in every stream and stone. They tell of a time when fire was pure, before it learned to burn with malice, when flames served only to give light and warmth to those who walked in darkness. These verses the Harfoots sing freely, for they speak of beauty and hope, of the world as it was meant to be. But the later verses grow strange and troubling. They speak of fire that walked upright, that spoke with silver tongue and offered gifts beyond imagining. They tell of flames that promised to teach the secrets of growth and healing, of making the barren places bloom and the weak grow strong. And they speak in words so veiled that their meaning can only be guessed at, of prices paid and bargains struck in the deep hours of the night. One fragment, preserved in the memory of Malva Meadowbrook, tells of a stranger who came to the wandering folk in the guise of a friend. He was beautiful beyond description, his voice like music and his touch like benediction. He taught them songs of power, showed them how to make the earth yield its treasures, how to call rain from cloudless skies and healing from bitter herbs. Under his tutelage, the Harfoots prospered as never before. But prosperity came with a cost. The songs he taught them changed them, subtly but irrevocably. Their voices grew sweeter, but their words grew false. Their touch brought healing, but left a lingering coldness. Their eyes saw farther, but perceived less truth. They had gained power, but at the expense of something precious, something they did not realize they had lost until it was far too late to reclaim it. Another verse, known only to the daughters of the Brandyfoot line, speaks of a great burning in the sky. Stars fell like tears, the song says, and with them came judgment for the choices made in darkness. The beautiful stranger was revealed in his true form, not the friend and teacher he had appeared to be, but something far more terrible, a corrupter of the innocent and a perverter of the pure. Yet even in his revelation, the song suggests his influence could not be entirely purged. The gifts he had given could not be returned. The songs he had taught could not be unlearned. They had become part of the Harfoots' heritage, woven into the very fabric of their being. To reject them entirely might mean losing themselves, but to embrace them fully might mean losing their souls. This is perhaps why the song remains fragmentary, why no Harfoot dares sing it in its entirety. For to complete it would be to confront the full truth of their heritage, to acknowledge that their people's gifts, their ability to find the hidden places and walk the secret paths, their deep connection to the natural world, might not be entirely innocent in their origin. There are nights when the Harfoots gather around their fires and feel the weight of this knowledge pressing upon them like a heavy cloak. They see it in the way their children instinctively know which berries are safe to eat, which streams are pure to drink from, which paths lead to safety and which to peril. Such knowledge is too precise, too complete to be entirely natural. It speaks of teaching, of guidance from a source that understood the deep structures of the world with an intimacy that few beings possess. But was their teacher truly the enemy the song suggests? Or has the story been distorted by time and fear, transformed from tale of blessing into warning of curse? The Harfoots do not know, and perhaps that uncertainty is the cruelest burden of all. What they do know is that the song continues to evolve. New verses appear in the dreams of their young, prophecies wrapped in childish rhymes that speak of fires yet to come and choices yet to be made. Some of these verses tell of dragons stirring in their ancient lairs, of darkness gathering in the east, of rings of power that will decide the fate of all Middle-earth. And some speak of a stranger who will come to them bearing starlight, who will need their help to remember who he truly is and who he was meant to become. In the pre-dawn hours, when the veil between dreams and waking grows thin, the Harfoots sometimes hear their children singing these new verses in their sleep. The melodies are hauntingly beautiful, filled with a longing that reaches across the ages. But the words speak of fire, walking once again among the small folk, of tests that will determine not just their fate, but the fate of all who dwell in Middle-earth. And in the deepest verses, the ones that make the parents weep to hear them, the children sing of a choice approaching, a choice between the light that burns pure and the light that burns bright, between wisdom and power, between who they are and who they might become. The trees listen to these midnight songs and remember. The stones keep the melodies in their hearts. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient stirs and smiles, recognizing in these innocent voices the echo of promises made long ago, in the youth of the world, when fire first learned to walk among the children of Iluvatar, in the archives of Gil, Galad's court, hidden among maps of forgotten kingdoms and genealogies of long-dead kings, there exists a curious document that few have seen and fewer still have understood. It is written in an archaic form of Sindarin, inscribed upon parchment made from the bark of trees that grew in Beleriand before its drowning. The text is brief, consisting of only a few lines, but those who have read it report that the words seem to shift and change even as they watch, as if the very letters were alive with some malign intelligence. The document speaks of footprints found in ash, not the ash of ordinary fires, but the residue left behind by flames that burned with unnatural heat and purpose. These footprints were discovered in what remained of ancient settlements, places where the first peoples of Middle-earth had made their homes in the elder days. The prints were small, smaller than those of men or even elves, small enough to belong to children or to folk of diminutive stature. But they glowed. Even centuries after they were made, these impressions in the ash retained a faint luminescence, a cold fire that made the stones around them crack and crumble. The elves who found them dared not touch them directly, for they sensed in that ghostly radiance, something that predated the rising of the sun and moon. Something that carried within it the echo of the music's discord. Galadriel herself examined these prints in the years following the War of Wrath, when she still walked freely among the ruins of the elder days. In her journals, private writings that few have been permitted to see, she records her growing suspicion that these marks were not left by any mortal feet, but by something far more ancient and far more dangerous. The prints speak to me of innocence corrupted, she wrote in her flowing script, of small lives touched by vast powers, of children playing with fires that should have consumed them utterly. Yet they endured, these little ones, carrying within them the seeds of both blessing and curse. I fear we have not seen the last of their kind, nor the last of the powers that shaped them. Her fears were prophetic. In the Second Age, as the shadow began to gather once more in the east, reports reached the havens of the elves of strange wanderers in the wild places of Middle-earth. They were small folk, these travelers, moving always in the pre-dawn hours when the mist lay heavy on the ground. They left no permanent settlements, claimed no territories, sought no audience with kings or lords. Yet wherever they passed, the land remembered. Farmers in distant valleys spoke of crops that grew too well, of harvests that exceeded all reasonable expectation in the wake of the wanderers' passage. Hunters told tales of game that seemed to offer itself willingly to the arrow, of forests where the paths arranged themselves for easy travel. Even the weather seemed to bend to accommodate these mysterious migrants, providing clear skies for their journeys and gentle rains for their rest. But there were darker stories as well. Shepherds reported finding circles of blackened earth, where the small folk had camped, places where nothing would grow for 7 years. Travelers spoke of hearing strange songs in the night, melodies so beautiful they wept to hear them, yet so alien that the very air seemed to thicken and congeal around the notes. And there were whispers of children among the wanderers, whose eyes held depths that no child's gaze should possess, who spoke in their sleep in languages that had not been heard in Middle-earth since the days of Morgoth's power. These reports might have been dismissed as the fevered imaginings of rustic minds, but they reached the ears of one who had cause to take them seriously. Sauron, in his fair form as Anatar the Lord of Gifts, heard these tales with keen interest, in the workshops of Ost, in Idil, where he labored alongside the elven smiths to forge rings of power. He would sometimes pause in his work and smile a secret smile when word came of the wanderer's passage, for he remembered them. In the deep vaults of his memory, preserved from the days when he served as Ol's apprentice in the halls of Valinor, lay the knowledge of a work he had begun but never completed. It was an experiment in the crafting of souls, an attempt to understand how the music of creation could be altered without destroying the melody entirely. He had worked with voluntary subjects, beings of pure spirit who offered themselves for study in the pursuit of greater understanding. But purity, he had discovered, was easier to corrupt than to preserve. The spirits he had touched, even with the gentlest influence, had been forever changed. They carried within them now a resonance that responded to his will, a harmonic frequency that he could pluck like a harp string to produce whatever music he desired. When the Valar had grown suspicious of his experiments, and forbidden their continuation. Sauron had released his subjects back into the wilds of Arda. Most had faded into the spiritual realm from whence they came, but some, the strongest and most adaptable, had chosen to take physical form. They had walked the earth in the bodies of the small and seemingly harmless, learning to love the growing things and the changing seasons, gradually forgetting their origin in the laboratories of divine ambition. But forgetting is not the same as being forgotten. The mark Sauron had placed upon them remained, dormant but not dead, waiting for the moment when their Creator would have need of them again. They were his unwitting servants, shaped by his touch to be perfectly suited for purposes they could not imagine. Living repositories of power that could be activated with a word. Sleeper agents in the great game of dominion over Middle-earth. Now, as he crafted the rings that would bind the fate of all free peoples, Sauron began to consider how best to make use of these wandering remnants of his ancient work. They were perfectly positioned to serve as his eyes and ears in the wild places where no orc could go undetected. Their innocent appearance would allow them to approach settlements and gather intelligence without arising suspicion. And their deep connection to the natural world would make them ideal agents for spreading his influence into the very roots and stones of Middle-earth. But first, he would need to reawaken the dormant command structures he had woven into their spiritual essence so long ago. This would require a catalyst, something to remind them of their true nature and purpose. He thought of the ancient footprints found in ash, still glowing with his power after all these centuries, and smiled. The time was coming when those small feet would walk once more through flame, carrying his will to every corner of Middle-earth. The Harfoots would remember their true master, whether they wished to or not. In her distant realm of Lothlorien, Galadriel felt a chill wind blow through her heart and knew that something precious was about to be lost. The small folk, who had once walked in innocence, were about to discover the price of gifts received from hands that should never have been trusted. But in the deep places of the earth, where ancient fires still burn with the heat of creation itself, other powers stirred in response to Sauron's plans. For the Harfoots were not the only ones who remembered the footprints in the ash, nor the only ones who recognized the significance of small folk touched by vast powers. Dragons dream in the deeps, and their dreams are fire. Beneath the misty mountains, in caverns that have never known the light of sun or moon, something vast and ancient dreams of flame. The dragon Scatha the worm lies coiled in chambers carved from living rock, her scales reflecting the glow of fires that have burned unquenched since the elder days. But Scatha is not alone in her vigil. Throughout the deep places of Middle-earth, her kindred maintain their own eternal watches, guardians of secrets older than the kingdoms of men. They are the living memories of Arda's youth, these great worms, witnesses to the music of creation and keepers of its darkest harmonies. In their dreams they preserve the knowledge of what was, what is, and what yet may come to pass. And in the turning years of the Second Age, their dreams have grown restless, for they sense the stirring of old powers and the movement of ancient plans. The dragons know of the Harfoots, have always known of them. In the depths of their immortal memory lies the record of every small footstep that ever pressed upon the earth, every innocent song that ever carried within it the echo of corruption. They watched as Sauron worked his subtle influence upon the wandering folk in the world's youth, observed the delicate process by which pure spirits were touched with shadow and sent forth to serve purposes they did not understand. But the dragon's interest in the Harfoots extends beyond mere historical curiosity. For woven into the fabric of both peoples' fate is a prophecy spoken in the earliest days, when the Ainur still walked openly upon the earth and the future was malleable as heated gold. The prophecy speaks of a time when fire and earth would be united, when the great and the small would join their destinies, when the songs of the deep places would merge with the melodies of the wandering roads. And at the heart of this prophecy lies a terrible choice. In the grey mountains, Glorung's heir and Callaghan, the Black's distant cousin, a she-dragon known as Pyraxes the Star, hearted, maintains her vigil over archives that predate the memory of elves. These are not books or scrolls as mortals understand them, but living flames that preserve knowledge in patterns of light and heat. Within these fires burns the complete history of Sauron's early experiments, including details that even he has forgotten in the long turning of the years. Pyraxes knows that the Harfoots carry within them more than just the mark of their creator's touch. They bear actual fragments of Sauron's own essence, microscopic shards of his power that were embedded in their spiritual matrix during those first experiments. These fragments are not merely passive markers. They are active components that can be awakened and directed, turning the innocent wanderers into extensions of Sauron's will. But the dragon also knows something that Sauron himself has forgotten in his pride and ambition. The fragments work both ways. Just as they allow him to influence the Harfoots, they also create a connection through which the small folk might, under the right circumstances, influence him in return. It is a vulnerability he does not realize he possesses, a weakness that could be exploited by those with the wisdom to recognize it. The question that burns in Pyraxes' ancient mind is whether any among the free peoples possess such wisdom, and whether they will recognize the opportunity when it presents itself. In the Iron Hills, the dragon Dane Ironfoot will one day drive from his halls keeps watch over deeper secrets still. His name is Vermithax the Dream, Weaver, and his power extends not just over flame and claw, but over the very substance of sleep and vision. Through the network of dreams that connects all living beings, he observes the growing influence of the Harfoots' unconscious power. For the small folk do more than simply wander the earth. They dream it into new shapes. Their migrations follow patterns that echo the deep structures of Arda itself, and their songs carry harmonies that resonate with the world's fundamental frequencies. Without realizing it, they are continuously reshaping reality in subtle but significant ways, healing damage done by war and conflict, restoring balance to regions thrown into chaos by the movements of armies and the policies of kings. But this healing power can be perverted, turned to serve darker purposes. If Sauron succeeds in reactivating his control over the Harfoots, their innocent magic could become a weapon of unimaginable subtlety and scope. Instead of healing the land, they would poison it from within. Instead of restoring balance, they would tip the scales irrevocably towards shadow and despair. Vermithrax has seen visions of this dark future, glimpsed in the dreams of mortal men who wake screaming from nightmares they cannot quite remember. He has seen Middle Earth transformed into a reflection of Morgoth's vision, not openly conquered by armies of orcs and demons, but subtly corrupted from within, turned into a place where beauty serves only to mask horror, and hope exists only to make despair more exquisite. But he has also seen another possibility, a path that leads through fire and sacrifice to a different outcome entirely. In this vision, the Harfoots' power is not perverted but purified, not turned to serve darkness, but cleansed of the shadow that has touched it. The process would be agonizing, requiring them to confront the full truth of what they have become and to choose consciously what they wish to remain. And it would require the aid of dragons. The great worms of Middle Earth have their own role to play in the unfolding drama of the Second Age, a part written for them in the music of creation itself. They are not merely beasts driven by greed and malice, as the songs of men would have it, but instruments of cosmic justice, agents of purification through fire. When the time comes, and Vermithrax senses it approaching like a storm front on the horizon, they will emerge from their deep places to offer the Harfoots a choice. They can accept the dragon fire willingly, allowing it to burn away the shadow that clings to their souls and restore them to the innocence they have lost. The process will be painful beyond description, and not all will survive it. But those who do will be transformed, made into something greater than they were, champions of light who can stand against the darkness that is coming. Or they can resist, clinging to the power they have known and the security it has provided. In that case, the dragons will still come, but not as purifiers. They will come as executioners, putting an end to the threat the corrupted Harfoots represent, before it can spread beyond containment. The choice, when it comes, will be entirely theirs. But Vermithrax and his kin will be watching, waiting to see which path the small folk choose. In the deepest caverns beneath Erebor, where the gold of kings lies heaped in glittering piles, the greatest of the northern dragons maintains his own vigil. His name is spoken only in whispers, for to say it aloud is to risk drawing his attention across vast distances. The elves call him Glorong's shadow, the dwarves know him as Gold, Heart the Terrible, but his true name is Aethon, the Burning One. First, born of the dragon brood and keeper of their most sacred charge, Aethon remembers the time before time, when the world was young and the Aina still shaped it with their songs. He was present at the creation of the Silmarils, witnessed the corruption of the two trees, observed the first speaking of the curse that would dog the line of Eft Anor through all the long years of exile. And he remembers, with perfect clarity, the day when Sauron first began his experiments with the wandering spirits who would become the Harfoots. In Aethon's memory lies the key to understanding what the small folk truly are and what they were meant to become. For Sauron's experiments were not entirely his own conception. They were part of a larger pattern, a cosmic design that even the rebellious Maya did not fully comprehend. The Harfoots were intended from the beginning to serve as bridges between the great and the small, the mighty and the humble, the fires of creation and the quiet growing things of earth. But bridges can carry traffic in both directions. As the Second Age reaches toward its climax, As the rings of power near completion, and the shadow of Nent Mena's fall lengthens across the western sea, Aethon feels the approach of the moment when all must be decided. The Harfoots will soon face their destiny, and with it will come the opportunity to fulfill their true purpose, or to become the instruments of its ultimate defeat. The dragon's ancient heart burns with anticipation and dread in equal measure, for he knows that when the time comes, even the dragons will not be able to stand aside and merely observe. They too will be called to choose, to decide whether the fire they carry serves creation or destruction, whether the power they wield will heal the world or burn it to ash. And in the deep places where they keep their vigil, the dragons dream of small feet walking through flame, of innocent voices raised in songs of power, of a choice that will echo through all the ages of the world. The fire remembers everything, and soon it will be time for the remembering to end and the choosing to begin. In the mirror of Galadriel, images swirl like leaves caught in an autumn wind, fragments of what was, what is, and what yet may come to pass. The Lady of Light stands before its silver surface in the depths of Caras Galadon, her face illuminated by visions that would drive mortal minds to madness. She has looked into this mystical pool countless times across the long years of her exile from Valinor, seeking guidance in the darkness that gathers about Middle-earth. But tonight, the visions that rise from the water's depths are unlike any she has seen before. She sees small feet walking through corridors of flame, bare souls pressing against stones that glow with inner fire. The feet belong to children, Harfoot children, their faces filled with wonder, rather than fear as they navigate paths that would consume any other mortal being. They sing as they walk, their voices weaving melodies that seem to shape the very flames around them, turning destructive fire into something that nurtures and protects. But this is not the present, nor even the past. This is prophecy, a glimpse of possibilities that exist in the space between what is known and what is feared. Galadriel's foresight has always been both gift and curse, blessing her with knowledge of dangers yet to come while burdening her with the weight of events she cannot prevent. In the years following the War of Wrath, she has watched the slow corruption of Middle-earth with growing dread, sensing the subtle influence of powers that work through deception rather than open conquest. The Harfoots occupy a special place in her prescient visions. She has seen them in dreams that span centuries, watched their innocent migrations across landscapes that shift and change with the turning of the ages. In some visions they appear as harbingers of hope, their presence healing wounds left by war and strife. In others, they are instruments of a corruption so subtle that even they do not recognize it until it is too late to resist. Tonight, however, the mirror shows her something different. Tonight, she sees not what the Harfoots are, but what they might become. The water's surface ripples, and the scene changes. She sees herself standing in a place of shadow and flame, facing a figure whose beauty masks a corruption that runs to the very core of his being. It is Sauron, but not as he appears in his current guise, as Anatar the Lord of Gifts. This is Sauron as he was in the beginning, Maran the Admirable, servant of Ald, bearer of light and wisdom. But his light has been perverted, turned into something that burns without warmth and illuminates without revealing truth. In his hands he holds chains, wrought not of iron but of song and memory, bonds that connect him to souls scattered across Middle-earth. And among those souls, Galadriel recognizes the innocent hearts of the Harfoots. "You cannot save them," the vision Sauron speaks, his voice like honey poured over broken glass. "They were mine before they knew their own names, shaped by my touch in the youth of the world. Every song they sing echoes with my harmony. Every path they walk follows patterns I established in the deeps of time." But the vision, Galadriel, does not despair. Instead, she sees herself reaching out with powers that she has kept hidden even from herself. Abilities that stem not from her Noldorin heritage, but from older, deeper sources. In her hands materializes a light that is not light, a flame that burns with the pure fire of creation itself. "They were touched by your shadow," the vision shows her saying. "But they were not made by it. Beneath your corruption lies their true nature, and that nature remembers the song as it was meant to be sung." The scene shifts again, and Galadriel sees a great convergence approaching. A moment when all the threads of fate will weave together into a pattern that will determine the destiny of Middle-earth itself. She sees the Harfoots standing at the center of this convergence, no longer wandering aimlessly, but gathered in a place of power that exists between the physical world and the realm of spirit. They are singing, these small folk, but their song is different now. Gone are the simple melodies of their wandering days, replaced by harmonies of such complexity and beauty that they seem to reshape reality with each note. The song they sing is both lament and celebration, both ending and beginning. A musical representation of choice itself, of the moment when destiny becomes decision. And in the heart of their singing stands a figure Galadriel recognizes but cannot quite name. Tall and strange, wreathed in starlight and shadow, bearing the aspect of both destroyer and preserver. It is the stranger who fell from the sky, but transformed, awakened to his true nature and purpose. In one hand he holds fire that could consume worlds, in the other water that could heal them. He has become the fulcrum upon which the fate of the small folk, and perhaps all Middle-earth, will balance. The vision shows Galadriel the choice that approaches. The Harfoots can cling to the power that Sauron's touch has given them, accepting the corruption that comes with it in exchange for the security and capability it provides. Or they can surrender that power willingly, allowing it to be burned away by fires of purification that will leave them diminished but free. But there is a third option, one that requires not just courage, but a wisdom that transcends the understanding of any single people. They can choose to transform their corrupted power rather than abandon it, to turn Sauron's gift against its giver by using the very connections he created to channel something pure and true back into his network of influence. Such a choice would require sacrifices beyond imagining. Many of the Harfoots would not survive the attempt, and those who did would be forever changed, bearing scars that would mark them for all their remaining days. But the reward would be proportional to the risk. The possibility of striking a blow against the shadow that no army could deliver. The chance to turn Sauron's greatest weapon into the instrument of his defeat. Galadriel sees herself in that future moment, standing beside the transformed stranger as he guides the Harfoots through their moment of choice. She sees her own power joining with theirs, adding the strength of her will to their innocent courage, helping to focus their song into something that can pierce the veil between worlds and carry light into places where darkness has reigned unchallenged for centuries. But she also sees the price of such involvement. To aid the Harfoots in their transformation, she would have to reveal aspects of herself that she has kept hidden since her first awakening in Valinor. She would have to acknowledge powers that stem not from her elvish nature, but from older sources, inheritances from the time before time, when the boundaries between Aina and Elder were less clearly defined. The revelation would mark her irrevocably, setting her apart from her own people and making her a target for forces that prefer the current order of things. She would become, in effect, a bridge between the great and small peoples of Middle-earth, a living symbol of the unity that Sauron's divisions are designed to prevent. As the visions fade and the mirror's surface grows still, Galadriel contemplates the weight of what she has seen. The future is not fixed. It remains a field of possibilities, each choice creating new branches in the tree of time. But the moment of convergence approaches, and with it the need for decisions that will echo through all the ages of the world. She thinks of the Harfoots in their innocent wandering, unaware of the destiny that awaits them. She thinks of the stranger, struggling to remember who he was meant to be. And she thinks of herself, bearing knowledge that grows heavier with each passing year, watching the slow approach of a moment when all her foresight and wisdom will be tested against forces that have been planning their moves since the world's youth. The mirror shows many things, but it cannot show the outcome of choices not yet made. For that, Galadriel must trust in something deeper than vision, the hope that when the moment comes, both great and small will find the courage to choose light over shadow, unity over division, sacrifice over security. But first, she must prepare. For the visions have shown her that her role in the coming convergence will require powers she has never dared to use, wisdom she has never dared to speak, and a willingness to become something she has never allowed herself to be. The fate of the Harfoots, and perhaps all Middle-earth, may depend upon the choice of one who has spent ages learning to see clearly, but who must now learn to act upon what she has seen, and time grows short. Above the misty mountains, in the star-scattered dome of night, a new constellation appears where none existed before. The astronomers of Net Mena mark its sudden manifestation with instruments of brass and silver, recording its position relative to the ancient star, patterns that have guided navigators since the world was young. But their measurements reveal something that troubles the wisest among them. The new stars are arranged in a perfect circle, like a crown of fire suspended in the void, or like a ring. The constellation appears gradually over the course of several nights, new points of light kindling one by one until the full pattern is revealed. By day, learned men debate its significance in the halls of Armanelos, consulting ancient texts and star charts that predate the founding of their island kingdom. Some claim it is a portent of great fortune, a sign that the Nenmenrians are destined to surpass even the elves in wisdom and power. Others whisper of darker interpretations, recalling prophecies that speak of lights in the sky that herald the coming of long, hidden perils. but in the wild places of Middle-earth. Among folk who read meaning in the flight of birds and the turning of seasons, the appearance of the ring, constellation strikes a deeper chord. The Harfoots feel it in their bones, a resonance that vibrates through their small frames, like the echo of some vast bell struck in the depths of the earth. Their children wake from dreams of flame and starlight, singing fragments of melodies they claim to have learned from the sky itself. And in the depths of their wandering camps, ancient wheels begin to turn. Sadok Burrows is the first to notice the change in his people's behavior. The Harfoots have always been creatures of instinct and intuition, their migrations guided more by feelings than by conscious planning. But in the nights following the constellation's appearance, their movements take on a new urgency and precision. Where once they meandered along forest paths and river valleys, following the easiest routes through the landscape, now they march with the directness of an army advancing toward a predetermined battlefield. More disturbing still, they no longer travel as separate family groups, but begin to converge. Streams of small folk flowing together from all corners of Middle-earth, towards some central destination that none of them can name, but all seem to know. Sadok finds himself leading a growing caravan of his kin, their numbers swelling daily as other wandering groups join their migration. The children speak most freely of what draws them onward. In their innocent voices, they describe dreams of a great gathering, a time when all the scattered songs of their people will be united into a single, mighty chorus. They speak of the stranger as if he were already among them, though he has not yet arrived, describing his presence with a certainty that chills the hearts of their elders. He will teach us the true words, little Poppy Proudfellow tells her grandmother, her eyes reflecting the starlight in ways that seem too deep for childhood. The words that make the fire dance and the stones sing. The words we forgot when we chose to be small. But what does it mean to choose to be small? And what were the Harfoots before they made that choice? These questions haunt Sadok as the great convergence continues. In the oldest songs of his people, buried beneath layers of metaphor and childish rhyme, he begins to discern hints of answers that terrify him. The Harfoots, it seems, were not always the humble wanderers they have become. In the youth of the world, when the music of creation still echoed clearly in every stone and stream, they possessed powers that rivaled those of the Maya themselves. They were the bridge builders, the song weavers, the ones who could speak directly to the fundamental forces that shaped reality. Their voices could call rain from cloudless skies, summon healing from the very air, command the loyalty of beast and bird. They were, in their own way, as mighty as dragons, as wise as eagles, as enduring as the mountains themselves. But power without wisdom is corruption's greatest ally. And in their innocence, the early Harfoots had been easy prey for one who understood the seductive nature of gifts freely given. Sauron had come to them in the guise of a teacher, offering to help them understand and refine their abilities. Under his tutelage, their powers had grown beyond all previous bounds, but so too had their dependence upon his guidance. Slowly, subtly, he had woven his own will into the fabric of their magic, creating bonds of influence that would endure even after his true nature was revealed. When the revelation came, when the Valar's justice fell upon Morgoth and his servants. The Harfoots had faced a terrible choice. They could attempt to purge Sauron's influence from their magic, knowing that the process might destroy their powers entirely. Or they could accept the corruption as the price of retaining their abilities. They had chosen a third path: diminishment. By making themselves small, literally and figuratively, they had hoped to make Sauron's hold upon them too tenuous to maintain. They had surrendered the greater part of their power, accepting lives of humble wandering, in exchange for the hope that they might eventually find a way to cleanse themselves of his influence entirely. But the connections remain dormant, but not dead. And now, as the ring constellation burns in the sky above, those long, sleeping bonds are awakening. The convergence reaches its climax in a hidden valley that exists in the space between the physical world and the realm of dreams. It is a place the Harfoots call the Heart of Songs, where the melodies of all their scattered migrations have collected over the centuries like water flowing into a lake. Here, beneath the light of the ring-shaped constellation, thousands of small folk gather for the first time since the Elder Days. They come in silence, their usual chatter stilled by the weight of what approaches. They arrange themselves in patterns that mirror the constellation above, forming concentric circles around a space that remains empty, waiting. And as the night deepens toward dawn, they begin to sing. The song that rises from their throats is nothing like the simple melodies they have preserved through centuries of wandering. This is the song of awakening, the melody that Sauron taught them in the world's youth, preserved in perfect detail in the deepest vaults of their collective memory. It is beautiful beyond description, filled with harmonies that seem to reshape the very air through which they pass. But it is also deadly, for with each note they sing, the bonds that connect them to their ancient corruptor grow stronger, drawing him closer across the vast distances that separate his current incarnation from the place of their gathering. He comes not in physical form, but as a presence, a will that touches each singer and claims them as his own. Some of the Harfoots resist, feeling the wrongness in the song and trying to stop their voices from adding to its growing power. But the melody has a life of its own now, sustained by the combined will of thousands of singers. And those who would break free find themselves unable to cease their participation. Only the children seem unaffected by the compulsion, their innocent hearts recognizing something their elders have forgotten. That songs can be changed, that melodies can be rewritten, that even the most binding magical contracts contain clauses that the wise can exploit. As the ring constellation reaches its zenith and the song approaches its climactic crescendo, the children begin to sing a different tune entirely. Their voices are small compared to the mighty chorus of their elders, but they carry within them a purity that cuts through corruption like sunlight through shadow. They sing the song of choice, a melody that exists in the spaces between notes, in the silences that give music its meaning. It is a song that asks rather than commands, that offers rather than demands, that awakens the power of decision. In hearts that are forgotten, they possess such strength. And from the empty space at the center of their gathering, a light begins to grow. The light of the stranger, arrived at last to help them choose who they will become. But in the growing radiance, shadows also gather. For not all who would influence the Harfoots' choice serve the cause of light. The true test is about to begin, and the outcome will determine not just the fate of the small folk, but the future of all Middle Earth. The ring constellation burns brighter, and the night holds its breath, waiting for the choice that will echo through all the ages of the world. In the hidden valley, where songs are born and choices are made, the stranger stands wreathed in starlight and shadow, his true nature revealed at last. He is neither fully of the light, nor entirely claimed by darkness, but something rarer and more precious. One who has walked in both realms and chosen to serve neither master, but the greater music that encompasses them both. The Harfoots look upon him with eyes that see clearly for the first time in ages. Gone is the confused and gentle being they sheltered from the crater's fire. In his place stands one of the Astari, the order of wizards sent by the Valar to guide the peoples of Middle Earth through the trials that lie ahead. But this is not Gandalf the Grey or Saruman the White, whose stories will be sung in later ages. This is the Blue Wizard, Palando, the far traveler, whose mission was to walk among the small and forgotten peoples of the world. Yet, even as they recognize his true nature, the Harfoots feel the weight of another presence pressing upon their gathering. Sauron comes not in physical form, but as a voice that speaks directly to their hearts, reminding them of ancient bonds and older loyalties. His words are honey and music, promising power beyond imagining to those who remember their true heritage and acknowledge their rightful master. My children, his voice whispers through the starlit air, how long have you wandered in diminished form, denying your birthright for fear of shadows that exist only in memory? I offer you now what I offered your ancestors in the world's youth, the chance to become what you were meant to be, to take your place among the great ones of Middle Earth. Some among the gathered Harfoots feel the pull of his words, remembering the intoxicating sensation of power that flowed through their veins in the elder days. They recall the time when their voices could reshape mountains, when their songs could heal any wound or mend any broken thing. The promise of returning to that state of grace burns in their hearts like wine in the blood. But others hear beneath the honey a poison that makes their souls recoil. They remember not just the power but the price, not just the gifts but the giver. In Sauron's offer they hear the same seductive words that led their ancestors into bondage, dressed in new finery, but carrying the same essential corruption. Palando raises his staff, and the light that streams from its crystal head cuts through Sauron's influence like a sword through silk. When he speaks, his voice carries the authority of one who has walked with the Valar themselves, who has seen the halls of Valinor and heard the music of creation in its purest form. The choice before you is not between power and weakness, he tells the assembled Harfoots, but between freedom and bondage, between serving your own will and surrendering it to another. The gifts that Sauron offers come with chains attached, bonds that grow stronger with each use until you find yourselves puppets dancing to a tune you no longer remember choosing to hear. The confrontation that follows is not one of armies or magic, but of songs and stories, of competing visions of what the Harfoots might become. Sauron weaves for them a future of glory and dominion, showing them visions of themselves as the secret rulers of Middle-earth. Their power hidden beneath humble exteriors, but absolute in its scope. They would be his agents in every court and council. His eyes and ears in every kingdom, the instruments through which he would guide the world toward the perfect order he envisions. Pallando offers them a different path, one of service without servitude, of power used in the cause of protection rather than domination. He shows them a future in which they remain small in stature, but great in purpose. Their wandering transformed from aimless migration into deliberate pilgrimage. They would become the guardians of the wild places, the protectors of the weak and forgotten, the ones who ensure that hope survives, even in the darkest hours. But the choice is not merely between these two visions. For as the debate rages and the stars wheel overhead, a third voice joins the conversation, one that speaks not in words, but in music so pure and true that it makes both Sauron's seductions and Pallando's promises seem pale by comparison. It is the voice of the children, raised in the song of choice that they began earlier. But their melody has evolved, grown more complex and beautiful with each passing moment. They sing not of what the Harfoots should become, but of what they already are. Wanderers and wonder-workers, small in form but vast in heart, bearers of an innocence that no corruption can entirely destroy. Their song reminds the adults of truths they had forgotten in their fear and longing. The power they seek already flows through their veins, not as Sauron's gift, but as their birthright from the one who sang the world into being. They need no master to unlock this heritage, no external source to validate their worth. They are complete as they are, perfect in their imperfection, mighty in their humility. As the children's song reaches its crescendo, something unprecedented occurs. The bonds that connect the Harfoots to Sauron, links forged in the world's youth, and strengthened by centuries of unconscious reinforcement, begin to resonate with frequencies that were never part of their original design. The corruption that has slept within them for so long starts to vibrate at frequencies that transform its very nature. Instead of making them more susceptible to Sauron's will, the ancient connections become conduits for something he never intended them to carry. The pure love and innocent joy that define the Harfoots' essential nature. Across the vast distances that separate Middle-earth from his current stronghold, Sauron feels the unexpected feedback. The sensation of his own power being turned against him by the very beings he thought to control. The experience is more than disturbing. It is educational. For the first time since his corruption began, Sauron encounters something that his understanding of power cannot easily categorize or control. The Harfoots' innocence acts like a mirror, reflecting his darkness back upon itself and forcing him to confront what he has become. In that moment of recognition, the assembled small folk feel a change sweep through their gathered mass. The compulsion to sing Sauron's song fades, replaced by a freedom of choice they had not known they possessed. They can continue to serve their ancient master if they wish, accepting his power and the corruption that comes with it. They can throw their lot in with Pallando, becoming agents of the Valar's will in Middle-earth. Or they can choose the third path that their children have revealed. The way of being truly themselves, neither corrupted servants nor purified agents, but simply the Harfoots, wanderers in the wild places, singers of songs that heal rather than harm. The decision, when it comes, is not made by any single voice or vote, but emerges from the collective heart of the people like water from a spring. They choose to be themselves. Small, humble, wandering, and free. The power they release in making this choice sweeps across Middle-earth like a wave, carrying with it the scent of growing things and the sound of innocent laughter. But their choice has consequences that extend far beyond their own fate. For in choosing freedom over power, innocence over corruption, they have shown that Sauron's influence is not absolute, that his carefully crafted plans can be undone by the simple act of refusing to participate in them. The Lord of Mordor feels their rejection like a physical blow, the severing of connections he had counted upon for his ultimate victory. His carefully laid networks of influence shudder and crack, weakened by the loss of nodes he had thought permanently secured. And in her distant realm, Galadriel feels the shift in the world's balance and smiles for the first time in centuries. The small folk have chosen well, and their choice has opened possibilities that even her foresight had not perceived. The war for Middle-earth's soul is far from over, but tonight, in a hidden valley where songs are born, the forces of light have won a victory that will echo through all the ages of the world. Yet even as the Harfoots celebrate their liberation, shadows gather at the edges of their awareness. For Sauron does not accept defeat gracefully, and those who defy him often find that freedom comes at a price they had not expected to pay. The trail of the wandering folk is about to become more perilous than ever before, and not all who walk it will reach journey's end. The dawn that breaks over the Valley of Choices brings with it a silence deeper than peace. The profound quiet that follows the end of ages. The Harfoots, having chosen their path in the crucible of conflicting powers, now face the weight of what their decision means. They are free, yes, but freedom is not the absence of consequence. It is, rather, the acceptance of responsibility for one's own destiny. Pallando the Blue stands among them as the first light touches the peaks of the surrounding mountains, his form already beginning to fade like morning mist. His mission among the small folk is complete, though his greater work in Middle-earth has only just begun. Before he departs, he speaks words that will be remembered and passed down through generations of wanderers. You have chosen the hardest path, he tells them, his voice carrying the weight of profound sadness and equally profound hope. To be truly free is to walk without the certainty that comes from serving another's will, without the security that flows from surrendering choice to those who claim greater wisdom. You must find your own way now, guided only by the compass of your hearts and the wisdom of your songs. The Harfoots understand, in rejecting both Sauron's corruption and the Valar's guidance, they have chosen to navigate the treacherous waters of existence without map or star to guide them. They will make mistakes, terrible ones, perhaps. They will face dangers that their innocent hearts can barely imagine. Some among them will fall to shadow despite their best intentions, while others will rise to heights of heroism that surprise even themselves. But they will do so as themselves, not as extensions of another's will. As Pallando fades into memory and legend, the assembled Harfoots begin the great dispersal. The convergence that brought them together has served its purpose. And now they must return to their ancient pattern of wandering. But with a difference. Where once their migrations were driven by unconscious compulsion, following patterns laid down by Sauron's influence, now they move according to their own deeper rhythms. Some families choose paths that lead toward the rising sun, following rumors of troubles in the eastern lands where their help might be needed. Others turn toward the sea, drawn by dreams of islands where the light of the two trees still lingers in the growing things. Still others head north, seeking the wild places where their songs might heal wounds left by ancient wars. But their dispersal is not random. Like seeds scattered by the wind, each group carries within it the potential to bloom into something greater than the sum of its parts. For the choice they made in the valley has awakened abilities that lay dormant within them. Not the grandiose powers that Sauron offered, but gentler gifts that are no less significant for their subtlety. Their touch can now soothe the madness that war brings to the minds of mortals. Their songs can cleanse water poisoned by dark magic. Their presence can restore hope to lands where despair has taken root. They have become, in their own humble way, agents of healing in a world grown sick with conflict and corruption. Yet even as they embrace this new purpose, the Harfoots carry with them scars from their long bondage to shadow. Not all of Sauron's influence could be purged in a single moment of choice, no matter how pure that moment might have been. Traces of his corruption linger in some bloodlines, dormant but not dead, waiting for moments of weakness or despair to reassert themselves. Sadok burrows, now acknowledged as the eldest and wisest among the scattered people, bears this knowledge like a burden of lead in his heart. He has seen the faces of those who struggled most with the choice, who came closest to accepting Sauron's offer before the children's song turned the tide. These individuals will need watching, support, and perhaps intervention if the shadows within them threaten to overwhelm their chosen path. But there are also those who have emerged from the ordeal transformed in ways that inspire hope beyond measure. Young Poppy Proudfellow, whose innocent voice first began the song of choice, now carries within her a light that can be seen by those with the gift of true sight. She has become, without seeking the role, a beacon of hope for her people, living proof that even the smallest among them can rise to greatness when necessity calls. Nori Brandyfoot, once the most skeptical and practical of the wanderers, has developed an uncanny ability to sense the intentions of strangers. Her gift makes her invaluable as a scout and protector, able to guide her people away from those who would exploit their innocence while leading them toward those genuinely in need of aid. And there are others, each touched by the crucible of choice, in ways that enhance their essential nature while remaining true to who they have always been. They are becoming what they were always meant to be. Not the mighty sorcerers that Sauron would have made them, but something far more precious, healers of the world's heart. As the seasons turn, and the scattered groups of Harfoots settle into new patterns of migration, word of their deeds begins to spread throughout Middle-earth. Farmers speak of failed crops mysteriously restored after small folk passed through their lands. Soldiers returning from battle tell of madness lifted and spirits healed by gentle songs heard in the night. Children in isolated villages whisper of visitors who came bearing gifts of hope when all seemed lost. These stories reach the ears of the great powers of the age, each interpreting them through the lens of their own concerns and ambitions in Nanmena. King Gil, Galad's advisors debate whether these wandering healers represent an opportunity to be exploited or a threat to be contained. In Linden, Erond Half, Elven listens to the tales with growing interest, sensing in them the fulfillment of prophecies whose meaning has long been obscure. But it is in the depths of Mount Doom that the stories have their most significant impact. Sauron, laboring over the forges where the One Ring will soon be born, feels each act of healing performed by the scattered Harfoots like a thorn in his side. Their rejection of his power was blow enough, but their transformation into agents of light adds insult to injury. More dangerous still, their new abilities seem to operate on the same fundamental frequencies as his own power, creating interference patterns that disrupt his carefully laid plans. Where once he could influence events across vast distances through networks of corruption and fear, now he finds his reach curtailed by pockets of hope and healing that resist his touch. The Harfoots have become, quite literally, antibodies in the world's bloodstream, small but effective countermeasures to the infection of shadow that he seeks to spread. Their existence forces him to work harder, to be more subtle, to accept limitations that his pride finds almost unbearable. But Sauron is nothing if not adaptive. If he cannot reclaim the Harfoots through direct influence, he will find other ways to neutralize their threat. Already, his agents are moving through Middle-earth, spreading rumors about the wandering healers, sowing discord wherever their reputation brings them welcome. If their own people begin to fear and mistrust them, their effectiveness will be greatly reduced. And there are darker possibilities as well. The children of those Harfoots, who carry traces of his corruption, may prove more susceptible to his influence as they mature. A generation or two of careful cultivation might produce agents who appear to be innocent healers while actually serving his purposes. The game is far from over. Yet as Sauron plots and plans, he fails to account for the greatest strength of the free peoples, their ability to surprise even themselves. The Harfoots, having chosen their path, are discovering depths within themselves that no prophecy predicted and no plan anticipated. They are writing their own destiny now, line by line, choice by choice, song by song, and their story is far from finished. In the wild places of Middle-earth, where the old songs still echo and the starlight remembers the music of creation, small feet continue to walk paths that have no ending. The Harfoots wander still, as they always have, as they always will. But now their wandering has purpose beyond migration, meaning beyond survival. They carry within their hearts the light of choice freely made, the power of innocence consciously preserved, the strength of those who have looked into darkness and chosen light. They are the last trail of the Harfoots, but also the first steps toward something new. A people transformed not by external power, but by internal recognition of who they truly are. When the One Ring rises, and the world forgets their names, the earth itself will remember their footsteps. The stones will sing of their passage, the streams will whisper of their songs, and in the growing things of field and forest their healing touch will endure until the very end of days. for they have become what every free people must eventually become. Not servants of any master, whether dark or light, but servants of life itself, guardians of hope. Wanderers in the wilderness of choice, who find their way not by following others, but by listening to the deepest truths of their own hearts. The tale of the Harfoots ends where all true tales must end. Not with a conclusion, but with a beginning. Not with an answer, but with a question that each listener must answer for themselves. In a world of great powers and ancient evils, where the mighty clash and the wise make their plans, what difference can the small folk make? What power lies in innocence? What strength in humility? What hope in those who choose to heal rather than harm? The Harfoots have given their answer. The echo of that choice will ring through all the ages of Middle Earth, a song of hope that no darkness can entirely silence. And in that song lies a truth that even the wisest sometimes forget, that the smallest lights often shine the brightest, and the humblest voices often speak the deepest truths. The trail fades into legend, but the journey continues. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you.